The Fox City SCORE chapter and WHBY are pleased to bring you Biz Talk, a chance for you to hear from entrepreneurs and professionals as they share their experiences from starting to sustaining growth. Learn the skills needed for your business to be successful. If you missed anything, you can catch the Biz Talk podcast at biztalkwithscore.com. And now from the Myron Construction Studio, it's Biz Talk on WHBY.
Good morning and happy Saturday, everyone. I'm Rick Sense, and you're listening to Biz Talk with SCORE on WHBY. My co-host this week is Mary Rhode. Mary, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Great to see you back in the studio chair there. So
great to be here.
Great. Our guest this morning is Brad Diener. He's the regional manager from Lunda Construction. And Brad, you've been with Lunda for how long now?
I first started with Lunda in 2016.
Okay. And prior to that, what were you doing?
I was in the Army. I was in the Corps of Engineers with the Army.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
How long were you in the military for?
6 years.
Okay. Awesome. And so you've had some kind of training then before you went into this line of work through the Army Corps of Engineers, then I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to learn about both military engineering and civil works engineering because they're both mission sets of the Corps of Engineers. So I had the opportunity to spend most of my time doing survivability and mobility, counter mobility work with conventional engineer units, folks wearing doing the warfighter mission set. So did not work on locking dams or that type of civilian infrastructure mission set that the Corps has, but got to go all over the United States, serving with a lot of great men and women in the role that I had there.
Well, again, thank you for that service, Brad, and we're really glad that you're here in northeastern Wisconsin too, and I'm excited to talk to you today about what's happening over at your at Lunda there. So maybe we just start by saying, what is Lunda's mission? What exactly does Lunda do?
Yeah, so Lunda Construction has the opportunity to connect people and places. So traditionally, our bread and butter, so to speak, is bridge construction. So the company was founded in 1938 out of Black River Falls, Wisconsin. To this day, that's our headquarters, our corporate office, and we've grown since then to 3 different offices in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, our Fox Cities office in northeastern Wisconsin, which I'm a part of, and then, of course, the Black River office. And then we have another significant office in the Twin Cities. And then actually we just started an effort in Illinois and Iowa, Missouri with early beginnings of another office, another flagpole in the ground, so to speak, in that area.
So you're actually not just northeastern Wisconsin, then you are all over the Midwest, all over the world?
Yeah. Lunda's presence is all over the Midwest. Critical specifically in that transportation infrastructure bridge building world. We do have railroad divisions that work with Class 1 railroads doing work beyond just the Midwest, primarily in the Midwest, but doing railroad bridges, and then a pipeline division as well that supports kind of our country's pipeline infrastructure, doing shoring and things that are required for constructing that.
And what are some of the projects in our area, northeastern Wisconsin, would people be familiar, or even statewide, that they'd be familiar with here?
Yeah, so one that I'm really proud of was the Winneconne project that we did several years ago, just because it was unconventional from the standpoint of a Wisconsin DOT project, because we removed a critical link to that community that connected that community. Winneconne is pretty even between the two sides of the Wolf River that runs through the middle of it. And when we built a new bridge that was for transportation, we elevated it so that eliminated the opening that used to be in there that would limit traffic, vehicle traffic, whenever boats came through. But then we also built 2 fishing piers that created opportunities for recreation, which is vitally important to that community. Beyond that, we did the Interstate Highway 41, State Highway 441 interchange in Menasha a few years ago, which is another significant project in terms of connecting that community and all the folks who travel up and down those corridors every day. And then lastly, one that's we're very proud of is the Green Bay corridor. I mean, I'm sure many of the listeners remember it wasn't that long ago. There were several potholes, and a rough ride as you went north through Green Bay from essentially De Pere, all the way up to Swamico. And, that whole corridor from, De Pere, up to past Lombardy, we built all that.
Okay. Could you walk listeners through what the process is? I mean, obviously you just don't sit back and boom, you've got an overpass built or, a bridge or anything like that. Can you walk listeners through all the planning or the process that goes into just the pre-project, the project, and then the post-project stuff?
Yes. So, the folks that work for our Department of Transportation are great people. They're very taxpayer minded and making sure they're doing things that deliver value to the taxpayers. And they understand that everything we do with regards to our infrastructure comes at a cost. And so they do a very diligent job of, bringing the projects through conception, identifying what the needs are of our communities in terms of transportation infrastructure, and then budgeting, working with our legislature and our lawmakers to, earmark those funds and then bring those projects through design. So that's a front end project that's typically 2 to 3 years in front of where Lunda gets involved. Once the design's complete, the permits are taken care of, they've estimated the cost of the project, and they let a bid package. Every month, the second Tuesday of every month in the state of Wisconsin, there's a bid letting where there's typically somewhere between 20 and 50 projects that are put out for bid. So contractors like Lunda take the design plans and the provisions that outline the constraints on the project and determine costs to build it. And then there's a certain time by 11 a.m. on Tuesday morning, your bid's got to be submitted or it won't be opened. And then whoever's the lowest bidder is awarded the project. And then we go into our planning phases, all of our procurement. So the state is not procuring the materials. We as contractors procure all the concrete, the rebar, the beams, and then work with the state to construct the projects. So every project has a state representative, a project leader on it that's dedicated to the project at all times, a state project manager. So that management team from the state works with our management team to deliver the projects, ideally on time in a quality and safe manner that's under budget. So that's kind of that's the process, Rick.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the average length of time for a project that Lunda does?
I'd say 4 months. If I had to put an average on it, generally speaking, most of our projects are in the orange barrel season, as many folks are aware of. One thing that is unique within the construction industry for Lunda is that we are working year round. So, we're able to work on infrastructure projects through winter, whereas, for instance, someone doing grading or paving, they're constrained to, weather requirements and have a smaller working window. But our goal and what we always strive for is to provide a consistent schedule for our employees, and that means working year round. So we'll do things in the winter that use blankets and heating and all that type of stuff so we can keep our work progressing.
Is that something that Lunda's done all the time? They've always worked year round, or is it something that's newer because we've developed lighting technology and things like that where we can work?
Yeah, I would say it is certainly something that's becoming more and more prevalent. There's certainly technologies that have enabled that. The demands of owners are starting to require that more and more. I mentioned how focused the DOT is on, being taxpayer minded. They're also very focused on, believe it or not, impacts to the traveling public. So they put, in a contractor's opinion, very tight constraints on when we can impact the traveling public, believe it or not. And so they're always balancing the cost of impacts to commerce, i.e. the traveling public, and construction costs. So sometimes those requirements enable us to work in winter, so that way we have the bridge done and ready to go, so that those summer activities can get started right away and overall reduce the duration or the impact to the general public.
So you must have a very wide range and diverse employee group working at Lunda. Could you maybe walk through some of the roles of the people that the work that needs to be done for Lunda?
Yes. So within our facility in Hilbert, we have a weld shop or a fabrication shop. We have a heavy diesel mechanic shop that does all our maintenance work on our fleet. We have a carpentry shop that builds our forms, pre-builds our forms, and does all our carpentry work that can be done off-site. And then we have what I would call our steel form specialists and our logistical folks that help make sure we get all of our logistics between our yard facilities and the projects. So that's the staff of, there's roughly 30 folks who work in our yard in Hilbert. And then our field staff is comprised of operators. We have a lot of cranes. So we have a lot of crane operators, highly skilled individuals. They have to be certified nationally to be a crane operator. They have to maintain their certification on not only, on different types of cranes. There's different certifications for different classes of cranes, so they maintain all that. Then we have carpenters, who are the ones that are putting our forms together, driving our piling for the foundations that support our bridges. And then laborers who help with placing concrete, removing forms, general labor on our job sites. Then lastly, cement masons who are finishing concrete, grinding and patching concrete so that it has a good appearance on the back end of the work. So it's kind of, and then our office staff who, take care of, project managers, superintendents, project engineers who are helping manage projects and bring them to completion. And then administrative folks who do all the jobs that no one sees behind the scenes that make everything possible.
So from what you described to me, with what's going on at Lunda, Brad, you've got a lot of people that have a lot of skill, have had a lot of training, have learned as they've gone along. You don't walk out of your high school with your diploma in your hand after graduation and show up ready to do project work at Lunda, correct? Is it a process that when you hire somebody that you have a training department, or are they assigned, or do you hire only experienced people? Can you maybe walk listeners through that process?
Yeah, certainly, Rick. So our field staff are union employees, so they all have gone through an apprenticeship through their trade. Generally speaking, that's a 4-year process. Again, generally speaking, that involves 4 weeks of classroom or hands-on training. That's in addition to on-site training to walk through the process of becoming a pre-apprentice to an apprentice to a journey person. And we have, it's interesting you bring that up because statistically for us, the average age of our employee coming to work for Lunda in a skilled role, whether it's in our yard or out in the field, is 26 years old. So generally speaking, it's our successful employees have gotten some type of experience in the trades or in the industry. Perhaps they work for a local home builder, or they work for a flat work business. And then they transition to come work for Lunda once they have a lot of those skill sets and a kind of a good understanding of what we do.
You look for guys and gals that also did what you did, come out of the military. Do you have an active recruiting process or pipeline into the military?
Yes. So we have an individual just dedicated to the talent pipeline. We're engaged in several different entities in terms of, whether it's the Calumet County Business and Education Partnership, where we're engaging business leaders with educational leaders to talk about, what adds value to someone coming out of high school to come work for us or within the general construction industry. We're part of the new construction alliance, the Northeast Wisconsin Construction Alliance, which is working towards the same goals. It's interesting you bring that up, Rick, because recently we just started exploring different engagement opportunities with DOD and DWD, programs like helmets to hard hats, ways that we can get, service members into the industry. When I was serving, that's one of the challenges I had with my soldiers is as they were getting ready to get out of the military and move back home, they didn't really understand how their experience translated. And I was fortunate enough to serve with, 40 to 50 soldiers who were in a heavy construction unit. So they ran bulldozers and graders and scrapers all day long. That was their specialty in the Army. And it was interesting how they struggled to understand how their skill set was translatable on the civilian side. So there certainly is a lot of opportunity for us to get a hold of those folks and make sure they understand there's an opportunity for them here. The challenge is really just connecting what business leaders understand and what folks skill sets are available within the military, because it's hard to translate between the two different entities.
All right, we've hit our first break. You're listening to Biz Talk with SCORE on WHBY, and Mary, Rhode, myself, and Brad will be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Biz Talk with SCORE on WHBY. I'm Rick Sense, along with co-host this week, Mary Rhode, and our guest is Brad Diener from Lunda Construction. But before we get back to our discussion with Brad, I'd like to just take a moment to talk to you about SCORE Northeast Wisconsin. At SCORE Northeast Wisconsin, we serve an 18-county area in the northeastern part of the state, plus the county of Menominee in Michigan. We have over 50 volunteers, each an expert in their field, offering entrepreneurs no-cost and confidential mentoring. Those areas of expertise include IT, social media, marketing, cash flow, accounting, strategic planning, workflow, human resources, retail best practices, and many, many others. In order to register for a no-cost, confidential mentoring session, and or to learn more about SCORE Northeast Wisconsin, please visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. You can learn more about how the SCORE chapter can assist you with starting and or growing your business, and you can complete an application for a mentoring session. Simply complete the online form and submit it to SCORE. Within a few days, a SCORE mentor will be contacting you to set up a meeting. Remember, SCORE is no cost and offers experts who can offer you assistance in many different areas. To get started, visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And to support small business people, SCORE Northeast Wisconsin is always looking for new mentors. If you have experience that you would like to share with others, we'd love to talk to you. We welcome volunteers with experience in all aspects of business. Small business owners need your help, and your experience can make a real difference to their success. Go to score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, click on the volunteer button, and fill out the short application, and we'll get back to you to explain more. So thanks again for joining us on Biz Talk. And Mary, I'll turn the show over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Brad, just continuing kind of our conversation from that first segment, and I'd love to dive in a little bit to how Lunda Construction gets the word out to the community. Is it a situation where, clients find you and because they hear about the wonderful projects that you've been a part of, or do you have a team within your Lunda team that focuses on going out and finding those projects, or is it a mix of both?
Yeah, Mary, we have not done a great job of advertising historically, and that's something we're actively working on improving. All of 95% of the work we do is publicly advertised and publicly bid, but the one thing that we're missing and not advertising and sharing the story about Lunda is for future employment opportunities for folks that work for us. We had several occasions where we were at career fairs or hiring events for folks from within Calumet County and northeastern Wisconsin that had no idea what Lunda Construction was or what we did. So we do have a team that actively pursues projects and goes after them. But most of our marketing initiatives are aimed at making sure folks are aware of where we are and what we do so that they can come, take advantage of career opportunities we have.
Got it. Okay. So, so really, we talked a little bit earlier about some of those open positions or trade positions, more so within what are, as far as your workforce itself, some of those biggest needs that you have right now that you're actively out there looking for.
Yeah, so project management folks, estimating folks, construction estimating folks, carpenters, laborers, are kind of the four main areas that we're looking to fill. All three have skill sets, demanding skill sets, and it's challenging to find folks who have those skill sets or who are interested in, acquiring those skill sets. We're more than willing to train folks. But the construction industry is one that some folks are a little leery to dip their toes in.
Sure. So would you say, kind of those workforce needs is one of the larger challenges of the construction industry right now, or your particular portion of the construction industry? Or are there some other challenges that you feel like you're tackling at the moment?
Yeah, in the current market, what's constraining our growth is workforce availability. With the infrastructure bill that the previous administration passed and the current one is executing, there's quite a bit of work within infrastructure. And of course, locally in northeastern Wisconsin, the 41 corridor is a significant amount of the overall state spending that's happening right in our backyard. So we are constrained by our workforce.
As far as some of the main services or specialties that Lunda is known for, some of the things that you're most proud of when you are out working on a project, what are some of those specialty areas that, as a company, you guys just knock it out of the park?
Yes. So Mary Bridge construction, obviously, but there's not a lot of private clients that are looking to get a 150-foot bridge put in their backyard. So when we're not operating in that space, the things that folks might not necessarily know that we do is deep foundations. So for instance, Project Cinco at Green Bay in Green Bay at Georgia Pacific, major investment in our local community. We drove the deep foundation for that project. Wastewater, we're working at new water in Green Bay, doing a very significant wastewater improvement project there. Earth retention systems. So for the non-engineers out there, that's basically anything that holds back dirt, sheet piling, soldier pile lagging, all different types of systems, are kind of things we bring to the table for our private clients. And then lastly, millwright work, working inside of foundries, and because there's a ton of industrial work in our area. So we also operate in that industrial space.
Awesome.
All right. We've arrived at our second break this morning. You're listening to Biz Talk with SCORE on WHBY, and we will be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Biz Talk with SCORE on WHBY Radio. I'm Rick Sense, along with co-host Mary Rhode, and our guest this week is Brad Diener from Lunda Construction. Brad, it's been a very interesting conversation so far, and like a lot of organizations, you're struggling with talent. It seems to be that's a current constant drumbeat in everyone we talk to, that talent is a need. If anybody's interested in applying at Lunda, where would you direct them real quickly before I get into my next line of questioning?
Yeah, so lundaconstruction.com. If you're a little old school, 920-853-3522 is our local office. Just give us a call, and Laura would help out with, taking care of my application and guide whoever it is through the process.
So one of the cool projects that some lucky person who ends up working at Lunda would be able to work on, or in the past they've worked on, it is one that I'm a little familiar with, and that's the project up in Marinette at the Fincantieri shipyard. Could you maybe give listeners, first of all, a little introduction to that, and then what you guys did and how that's changed? Really, it's really changed how they operate their business up there now. And maybe walk through that project. I think it's an interesting one to hold up as example of project management changing the world, so to speak. So.
Yeah, Rick. So, that's a shining example of something I haven't mentioned yet, and that's our specialty services division. So, they're the smart folks led by Adam Durandale and his team doing, our dam projects and, our unique projects like the Fincanterry one. So, they had a challenge at their site in terms of how they launched bridges. It wasn't acceptable to side launch their bridges or their boats, anymore. And so they needed a platform to essentially lower the boats into the water. I feel like boats is perhaps not the right term to describe a Navy vessel.
They're pretty big, yeah.
As an Army guy, I have no problem making a dig on that. So they had a pretty difficult challenge there, not only from a funding standpoint, but also, there's, as you can imagine, taking a Navy ship and dipping it into a water body on a massive platform. There's, ships weigh a lot more than you'd think. And they need to go deep into a river. So there was some rock that had to get blasted and removed out of the way, and a big platform built. So what that looked like was a foundation system with hoist machines, several hoist machines on either side. And then the platform itself was made in Italy and barged all the way from Italy to Marinette, Wisconsin. And then after we had the platform for the hoists in place and all the hoists in, they floated the platform in and connected it. And to this day, they build boats, or ships, as I'm sure they're supposed to be called, and they drive them out onto the platform and lower them into the water, which, sounds simple, but is extremely technically challenging. I mean, there are, hundreds of these hoists that all have to work in unison, lifting, hundreds of tons of weight up and down, into the river. It's a pretty crazy feat to see. And one of those projects that is a career milestone, something that the folks who worked on that project will remember for the rest of their lives.
You work in a project like that, there's got to be just so many dozens of different people and different hats that you have to interact with as you're putting that contract in you're implementing that contract. Can you maybe walk through a little bit of some of the interaction you had to do with government, with the elected officials that you work with the labor unions that you work with, and what kind of relationship and how that builds the relationships as you go forward in other projects?
Yeah, Rick, like anything in business, building a project is all about relationships and the team that you form around that project. So, understanding the stakeholders, what their priorities are, what their perspective is, the value that they bring to the team, even if you don't think they're bringing value to the team, everyone's contributing, and it is a group effort. The challenge on that project was, we're working with a client that we normally work with. We had done a project with them prior to, so we did have a working relationship. It's a Italian company. So, just the cultural dynamics, of interacting with, not northeastern Wisconsin, farm country people is a learning opportunity, certainly. And then vendors, with such a unique project, you're working from vendors, from Italy, from all over the world that are bringing it together. And then with a unique project, as you run into issues, they're not issues you've ran into before that you need to tackle.
And so
with a project of that magnitude, and so many literal moving parts, what were some of the biggest lessons, the biggest takeaways for you all as a company from that project that you've perhaps carried into some of those lessons you've carried into projects that you're in now?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson was that we can't function in a siloed organization. As I mentioned earlier, Lunda's kind of built their reputation on bridge building, and, we connect people in places. So that obviously is indicative of a bridge builder. But this was This was, as I mentioned, a specialty services division projects. And so we brought together resources from our bridge division. We had folks from our Black River Falls office come and help, spent the entire project duration on that job. The superintendent for that job was from our Black River Falls office. So it was a little transformative for us as a company to kind of get slapped in the face with why we needed to be cross-functional and had to integrate ourselves and our teams, because we can't deliver these extremely challenging projects for our customers unless we're leveraging all the resources that we have within the company.
So you get up in the morning, and a lot of people, when they get up in the morning and they slam off their alarm clock and start thinking, oh, I got this to do today, that to do today. What do you think of? What gets you up in the morning, and what motivates you to get out of bed and jump in that car and be happy to go to Lunda to work each day?
What the future of the team's going to look like. What excites me, even though I'm a knuckle dragging engineer by education and a bridge builder, so to speak, is, what the team's going to look like 5 years, 10 years down the road, and what we're going to do today to set up for that future success. We mentioned earlier about the challenges of people and what that means for our company, and it means a lot for every company out there. But the thing with that challenge is it's not about what you're doing today to solve that problem. It's about what you were doing 5 years ago to solve that problem. And so I love the challenge of what we can do to solve that future problem and the opportunities it's going to create for the company, and the people that are a part of it.
So why is commitment to creating value and building that culture that you guys are learning from each job you do and applying it to the next job, why is that so important to you and the team at Lunda?
Because, I think anyone in construction is very proud of what they build. And I grew up from a farming family. My father worked in the dairy industry, grew up on a farm, and I remember asking him, as you were a kid on the farm, what did you enjoy about it? And he used to always tell me it was plowing the field, because as he was doing it, he could see his progress. And in my career now as someone who works in construction, you better believe when I have my 4 daughters in the car and we're tooling down the highway, I'm pointing out every bridge I've worked on and, sharing those stories. And I know that a lot of the folks who are part of this company are doing the same. So, the structures that we build will outlast us. A bridge is built to last 75 years. That's kind of the design life. And so when you're building something that's going to leave such a substantial mark on society, you get extra committed to the value that's generating. And you understand, I mentioned earlier, we don't have private people getting a hold of us to build them a bridge. These are significant financial commitments from the taxpayers, essentially from all of us. So it's our responsibility to make sure we're providing value, and that we're building a culture so that our folks understand the value they're providing to the community.
So speaking of culture, having multiple offices and a fairly large team, who sometimes I would imagine it's difficult to get everyone in the same place at one time. How do you keep that focus on workplace culture, and what are some of those things that you hold dear as a company, that make your current employees proud to work there and might make someone think about coming to work for you?
Yeah, well, culture is an ever-evolving thing, and it's certainly something very recently we've started putting more and more emphasis on as a company. I think one of the things that we're thinking about is the traditions that are associated with our culture. One of those traditions I mentioned earlier, the monthly bid letting that the DOT does. That's not only is that a task, but that's an opportunity for our teams to get together and work collectively. It's an all-nighter event. You start working at 7 a.m. and you hope that you get to lay down in bed that night. That's a win. Otherwise you're working, straight through the night until you submit that bid at 11 o'clock. And that's a significant emotional event. That's a team building opportunity. And that's a tradition that builds our culture here. So we're kind of seeking out and trying to do a more deliberate job of identifying what our traditions are that help build our culture, so that people tangibly understand, what we do and what we're all about.
So in addition to the bid events, what keeps you up at night? What things make you worry about what's going on with Lunda?
Well, on Monday, we're going to start tearing down a bridge over the interstate. That keeps me up at night, making sure everyone's safe. That my employees are safe, that the traveling public is safe. I mentioned constraints. We have a 6-hour window to tear down a bridge over the interstate. So there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of inherent risk. So there's a lot of challenges and opportunities, and making sure we're doing our due diligence in our planning process to identify those hazards and mitigate those risks. There's not a checklist. I mean, there is a checklist, but there's not a true checklist to identify those risks and mitigate those hazards. There's Murphy's Law and all those types of things. So, and then secondly, Rick, it's the business, decisions, and am I making the right decisions? And, will this work out in 5 years, or will this not work out in 5 years? Those types of things.
So who in your background, Brad, has played a really important role in your personal growth and your success at Lunda?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier my military experience. It's very unique to be an 18-year-old kid in their first year of college taking an ROTC course talking about leadership principles, management principles. And I think I had a really unique opportunity in the fact that when I was in that classroom as an 18-year-old kid, we knew we were going to be going to war. It was a certainty. We knew at that time you're going to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, and you're going to have the mantle of responsibility of leading 30 to 40 of America's greatest, through that as a platoon leader. So, that certainly created impact on me in terms of the serious nature of leadership, development, management, all that type of stuff. And then once I got in, not only the ROTC training, but the leaders I was around while I was in active duty are amazing. There is no better leadership management training than military service. Hands down, the best training I ever was around, best people I was ever around. Our military is a great organization.
But what lesson have you learned so far? Maybe that's not even at Lunda, in life, that's really impacted you the most?
Yeah. So, I have a list, in my office that stares me in the face every day of those lessons learned. The number one is control your emotions. It's important, to make sure your people understand that you're going to be predictable and you're not going to, you can express emotion, but if you're not in control of your emotion, it's a liability. And then I think, to be proactive. Complacency is human nature. It's easy to get comfortable. It's easy to get complacent. It's what we're hardwired to do, so, it's not easy to survive if you're always pushing the envelope in terms of, performance or whatever. So, trying to, avoid that complacency, because it's, success breeds complacency. So you got to try to fight that monster every day.
And what advice would you give to someone who is thinking after listening to the show that, man, that sounds like a cool place to work? What advice would you give them if they're considering that?
Well, I would say, Rick, this applies wherever you are in your life, but, your outcome is a direct result of your response to an event, and everything you do. And so, if you don't respond, accordingly, and that response can be hitting the snooze button and not showing the work up on time, or that response can be, well, I don't really need to get this task done. My boss won't be too angry if it's not done, when an event occurs. And so you got to control the controllables, control the response, when an event occurs. And that's going to take care of your outcome, as far as what the results are going to be. And that's true I think for anybody in any role, professionally and personally. I have a choice when I get home from work and I got four beautiful daughters that want my attention to, zone out and stare at my phone, or to, hear about their day and engage with them. So
are you having fun?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And
yeah, something's wrong if we're not having fun, right?
That's right. That's right. So how do you derive joy from what you do? I mean, obviously, I can tell from the facial expressions, again, the advantage of being able to see you during this interview and not being able to see you on the radio. I can let listeners know that Brad's had a smile on his face for most of this interview.
Yeah, there's passion. You can tell there's passion coming through.
So how do you derive that joy in what you do, Brad? And how do you share that with others?
Yeah, it's always about people. I mean, it's people are awesome. Going back to the response thing, it's you can go to work every day and shut the door behind you and not engage and not create a connected team with the folks you're working with, but life's much more enjoyable if you can share the wins of your, the folks you're working with. If Bob's son made varsity football team, if you can share in that joy, it's a whole lot better than not. So we get the opportunity to go to work every day and meet some outstanding people and really enjoy the people, and try not to let the challenges of the business side of things, or the technical details or things like that, weigh you down, because at the end of the day, you're not in a war zone. I got food, I got dinner, I got a roof over my head. Life's pretty good. So just enjoying it, Rick.
All right. And with that, we've reached our final break of the program. You're listening to Biz Talk with SCORE on WHBY, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Biz Talk with SCORE on WHBY. I'm Rick Sense, along with Mary Rhode, and our guest today is Brad Diener from Lunda Construction. But before we get back to the program, I just want to spend a few moments to thank our sponsors and donors that bring Biz Talk with SCORE to you each weekend. We couldn't present Biz Talk without their generous support. Thank you to Haling & Associates. Haling & Associates helps small businesses and individuals not just prepare tax returns, but plan ahead, helping you minimize taxes for this year and beyond. Haling & Associates, personal connection, positive results. Thank you to Johnson Financial Group. Wherever you are in life or the life of your business, Johnson Financial Group works with you to understand your goals, matching the right banking and wealth services to help you complete your mission. Thanks to the Business News for promoting our program in the biweekly business newspaper serving Northeast Wisconsin. The paper is delivered biweekly and contains relevant and useful information about the business community in Northeast Wisconsin. We'd also like to thank and recognize the David L. and Rita E. Nelson Fund within the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region for their generous donation in support of Biz Talk and SCORE Northeast Wisconsin. So, Brad, if people wanted to get in touch or learn more about Lunda, how could you direct them to do that?
LundaConstruction.com, LUNDA.
All right. So what is on the horizon for Lunda? What's going to be the next greatest thing for you guys?
Well, hopefully what's on the horizon for Lunda is what's on the horizon for our community in northeastern Wisconsin. So there's some really exciting projects that we're hoping to be a part of. The 41 corridor, as I previously mentioned, is a significant investment by the taxpayers, improving that interstate from 2 lanes to 3 lanes. There's, I believe, upwards of 60 to 70 structures, bridges on that corridor that'll be happening. And then beyond that, the other couple exciting projects, the De Pere South Crossing is going to be happening soon. So hopefully we all have our fingers crossed that helps with congestion in De Pere, getting across a bridge that Lunda also built by St. Norbert's there. And then a little bit further down the road, there's currently plans for replacing the bridge deck and some other components on the Leo Frigo Bridge, which hopefully no one's upset that I let that cat out of the bag. But 5 years or so from now, there might be a little bit of a challenge on the northern commute in Green Bay as some really critical rehab work's done on that structure as it goes through its life cycle.
And how's the Manitowoc project that you guys have been working on going?
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. There's, pretty large pedestrian. We have a couple projects in Manitowoc, Rick. We have a pedestrian bridge that's going to help connect that community. We're doing some work at the Kona Cranes site there, improving their infrastructure there, and then at the marina, helping for boaters there.
All right. Well, Brad, it's been wonderful talking to you this morning, and I hope listeners take away as much enjoyment from this interview as we did here this morning. You obviously are someone who has passion for what you do and really enjoy what you do, and it's great to have you as part of a very integral part of our community. So thank you to you in Lunda and the work you're doing.
Thank you much.
And before we wrap up, I just want to thank our listeners, for without you, we would not have a program. Join us each week here on Saturday mornings on WHBY, or later in the week. You can, if you want to listen to this episode again, we will have it available on our podcast, available through Buzzsprout or any other podcatcher pretty much that you have, your favorite ones out there. Just go ahead and find Biz Talk with SCORE and make sure you subscribe and get our feed. So thank you again for listening, and have a great week, everyone.